Welcome to Unlock 360, the podcast for champions of public education. Here we explore the connection between leadership, teaching, and learning, and reveal the keys to getting better results for all students. Each episode highlights a change maker who's turning vision into action and creating schools where both educators and students thrive. Welcome back to our podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Wendy York Davoud, and joining us today, we have Superintendent Dr. Dave Moyer of Northport-East, Northport Union Free School District in New York. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks for having me, Wendy.
So excited to have you on the show. Will you please start us off with a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. So I think that this is my 17th year as a superintendent. I started out as an English teacher and a coach. And my baseball team, my high school baseball team, we won a state tournament. I ended up getting into college coaching for a period, I want to say about 10 years, and went back into K-12 and decided that when I did that, that I wanted to take a leadership pathway and started all of my work toward completing a doctorate and spent most of my administrative career in the Chicago suburban area. And I'm on Long Island now in the Northport-East Northport School District, which is on the North Shore of Long Island. And been out here, I'm in my third year now.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful. And I'm excited because I think this makes our second guest from the great state of New York. And I've also had a guest from Illinois join us in the past. And Dave, I think one of the things that is so um, awesome about having you on the show is just how much experience you have in the seat. There's been a lot of turnover in the superintendency, in the past 6 to 10 years, and coming on to share and shed some light on what you've learned over the years and your experiences, is just awesome.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I enjoy this. And hopefully we can have a nice conversation today. And there's certainly no lack of topics to talk about as it relates to public education in the year 2026. So,
Yeah, that's right. That you're right about that. Okay. And tell us before we dig in deeply into Northport, East Northport, tell us, you know, what inspired you to go into education?
well, I just always wanted to be a coach. I came up with an athletic background, and that's what I thought all along. And then, as things unfold and things go in certain directions, I had always been in leadership roles and um, decided that I was interested in being in a leadership role, which made it a little bit interesting for me for two reasons. Number one is that everything I did along the way, I tried to use my background related to forming teams and building successful teams. But the other thing is, some people go into education and they don't necessarily think that they're going to be actively going into an administrative pathway. But I knew that that was what I wanted to do right out of the gate, and so I actually studied all the people that I worked for along the way to try to learn as much as I could about the things that they were doing that was working for them, types of different things that they had to deal with. Um, and the types of things that help make them successful. And I tried to apply that to me and my growth, and I think that was helpful. And as I sort through it some more and really started asking myself these questions when it became popular to start to talk about the why, the why, the why,
Yeah.
I started to think about how important I think public schools are to this country and the current thinking on by many people trying to minimize the importance of public schools. And I think about my dad, and he came up in a situation where uh, single parent, and when he was going through high school, I know how important his coaches were to him, and I think that without public schools, my dad, you know, public schools really, I think, helped my dad become the person that he is now. to the point where, he's, got a street named after him in his hometown, and,
Oh,
I think of a lot of kids and a lot of people like that, where the importance of their teachers and their coaches and what the public schools have been able to do to help them have access to a decent lifestyle, and overcome some of the things that they had to overcome that they may not have had the resources or access to or understanding of how to get through and manage and know what was out there for them and that they could be something and do something. I use that as a way to keep reminding myself, no matter how challenging or how frustrated I might get with various different things, of how important it is. What we do is so important to so many kids that need us, that it just kind of keeps me going.
yes, I love that, and I am one of those people as well, product of public education and a champion of public education. It is so important, and the impact is incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so now also, what's really cool is that you have served in multiple states. You mentioned, most of your career in Illinois. I believe you also served in Wisconsin, is that correct?
Yeah, my first 2 years as a superintendent, I was in, Burlington, Wisconsin, and then, came back to Illinois and, spent, time in 2 districts in Illinois before I came out to New York. So, I've been a total of 3 different states, which I guess might be a little bit unusual. It is very interesting because there are differences, between and among states. A lot of the a lot of the differences tend to relate, most directly to how they fund schools, but there's also, probably, I would say, more similarities than differences in, um, when you think about what does good instruction look like, or when you think about, the identity that schools, that communities form around their schools, and, the nuances about having to learn the local community, whether that's in one state or another. Um, there are always things that you have to put into local context, and that
Sure.
doesn't change no matter where you go. The challenges might be a little bit different, for each community, but I do think that in the end, I've realized that there are probably more similarities and differences. It's funny when you use different terms, people look at you sideways, they don't know what you're talking about or whatever, and it's like, what do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about?" It's been, what it's been able to do is help keep me fresh and help keep me growing and help keep me learning, and not get stale.
Yeah,
Sometimes, you need a certain amount of time in a certain situation to do the job that you were hired to do, and sometimes there's such a thing as staying too long. So
that's yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm thinking about, what you shared in terms of differences and similarities, and I think that you kind of touched on this briefly, but when it comes to high quality instruction, when it comes, strong teaching, uh, solid leadership practices, and what it takes to help kids learn, that's pretty much the same no matter where you go, right?
I think that when you think about, there are some people that, I gravitated towards, and there are other great people out there too, doing work in the field. Um, but if you took a look at the similarities that they all sort of land on, as it relates to assessment or as it relates to managing change or any of those types of things, that's not going to be a whole lot different from one place to the next, really.
Right, right. I could not agree more once again. Yes, okay. Now let's shift to Northport-East, Northport Union Free School District, stepping into the role of superintendent in January of 2024. What was it like? What did you learn? Where were they?
Well, um, the community was somewhat similar, or is, excuse me, somewhat similar to one of the districts that I was in the suburban Chicago area. Um, it was going through, some very, challenging, high profile, recent, occurrences, closing schools, a settlement with a local power plant as it relates to the proportion of taxes that they pay, things that were very, very, stirred a lot of intense emotion in the community.
Yeah.
And I had been through a variety of different things before, including closing schools and redistricting and doing all that kind of stuff. I've balanced budgets and made revenue decisions in multiple places. So for me, it was like, well, okay, here we go. Um, let's get this done. But um, for the people here, everything was so immediate and there was so much emotion attached to it that I think that one of the things I tried to do initially that I think I was relatively successful at was to just kind of take the temperature down a little bit and get people to relax, take a deep breath. And then we just started to put some plans in place about how do we move forward. And, the challenge is that there are so many really tremendous things about our district and our community that I love. But in school districts, for whatever reason, I guess it's because you have so many people that went to school there, still live there. Um, a lot of times you got a lot of teachers that went to school there that, teach. Um,
Yeah.
you have people that live in the community, they sent their kids there. Maybe they don't have kids in school anymore, but it takes people a really, really long time to forget about the past. In fact, you might suggest that as it relates to schools, people never do. So the challenge I'm trying to create a mentality where we start to look forward and decide where it is we're trying to get to and put some plans in place to get there. Um,
Yeah.
and I do think that there's a growing understanding of what we're trying to do and why we're doing it. But some of the people that have feelings about decisions that were made that don't want to let go of them, some people are loud, and when they get loud, they drown out other voices, and some of the other voices, they don't wanna play in that arena. They just wanna send their kids to school, or they just wanna, have good schools and have good
Yeah.
home values, and so I think a lot of schools around the country with social media now, especially, and then living in a society where we've just got this completely polarized society, are dealing with the same things, and, creating civil discourse and creating a mechanism to share legitimate factual information with the community, and to actually be able to find ways to get information to people in the first place and share the positives. Not that every place doesn't have things that they need to address and work on,
Sure.
but that doesn't mean there also aren't a lot of positives that we should be celebrating. And it gets old sometimes to constantly get beat over the head with negativity
Yeah.
when you're walking around knowing all the great things that are going on for kids.
I certainly do. It does. Yes. Yes, and
Sounds
yes.
like I struck a chord there somewhere, not
You
sure where it
did.
was, but
You did. You did. The negativity, the loudness of negativity drowning out the positive and the folks that wanna move forward. That really, resonates. It hits home, and it is, I think, true for so many in today's day and age, and I think also what you said about the, you know, the way social media has changed the game is spot on. Dave, I'm wondering about how you went about cooling things off, because I think that, stepping into the situation and getting to, really assess where everybody was in the community and the school district and what you shared there about your approach in the beginning is so powerful because there's so many other superintendents, and I think frequently when there is a leadership turnover in the seat, it can be because it's on the heels of something, some sort of an economic challenge or, a restructuring or politics or, even tragedy, right? And so what were some of the things you did to try to cool off the temperature?
Well, I guess there were a couple things. I mean, a couple of them were strategic. I wanted to make certain that the board had information. So we always were very sensitive about providing the board information and making sure that they had enough information, making sure it was timely. And we wanted to get the board to have confidence in my cabinet and their ability to make decisions at the board table. And I think that was one part of it. Another part of it was it was really important to strengthen our relationship with our union. And I worked closely with the board president, and we established some communication strategies with her executive board and with her directly. And we again tried to just be, I'm a pretty forthright person, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it comes back to bite me. Um, but I just erred on the side of honesty, and I think that, I don't know that people always trusted the information that they were getting, so I think at least I could say that even if they didn't like the information, for the most part, the majority of the people felt that they were getting the straight story, and they could trust what I was saying, and, I don't think there's ever been a time um, that anybody could point to where I didn't do what I said I was going to do. So some of those things are just basic things. There was concern that in order to balance our budget, we were going to have to sell some of the buildings that we closed. And
Okay.
that was what was creating a lot of angst in the community. And what I tried to get people to do was separate the issue of what are we gonna do with our buildings, and how are we gonna create a long-term, financial, sustainability strategy? Because, I think that the more those 2 got conflated, the more people couldn't even think straight about what was going on. So I try to separate those 2, and I think that once we did that, we were able to take a little bit more of a, reasoned approach to looking at what are the decisions that we need to make, what are the options available to us. That was one of the biggest things that helped. Then the other thing that I think is the most important thing that we did that I've tried to do in all the districts I've been in, and I think it's one of the things that I might be a little bit more intentional about, and in some ways maybe a little bit different than some superintendents, is I really believe strongly in the role of the building principal, and I really feel strongly in building the leadership capacity of people throughout the organization. So we invest all of our administrative meetings, our professional learning workshops around our district goals and our district priorities. So we really work on building leadership. We really work on uh, helping our leadership team understand and lead the work, and take it back to their buildings, be able to work with their teachers. And so I started out talking about future focused learning. Then we moved into innovation. And then we moved into some change management. And at the time that I was working with my administrative team around some of those things and then tying them to different types of leadership concepts, we worked on building culture. So we worked on the 5 dysfunctions of a team with my leadership team, and then we started to talk about what are professional learning communities, and looked at the DeFore model for professional learning communities to try to really create a true collaborative culture because we had great things going on for kids. Like our kids have a million different opportunities here that you just don't see in most places. But we had a fragmented system. We didn't have a lot of systems in place to support all the energy. And so we really try to focus on how do we build culture? How do we get teachers to collaborate? How do we get clarity around what our work is? How do we know if the students are progressing the way we would like them to? Um, and so when we talk about different, like if we talk about innovation or future focused or what, we create an organizational definition for everything that we do. So we don't throw around a bunch of nebulous terms that everybody
Right.
can create their own meaning around. none of it necessarily bad, but then no shared understanding of
Understand
what
it,
it is
yeah.
that we're trying to accomplish. So to me, other than some of the strategic things and nuanced things that were just local and particular to this district, there was the idea of building leadership capacity, and then looking at uh, the PLC model and getting that implemented and embedded in the district. And that could take a truly high functioning professional learning communities can be a 5 to 7 year process. So if we're saying we did some introductory stuff, we dabbled in the sandbox, and year one last year maybe was like our first true year. We're still relatively early on in the process, but where we were at the end of last year compared to where we were at the beginning of last year was outstanding work by virtually everybody in the organization. So I feel good about that.
I would as well, and that is the right work. Dave, so where are you now and where are you heading?
Well, as it relates to the professional learning communities, we are really worked on identifying um, clarity about um, what we thought the kids needed to learn, and we really started to move into more common assessments, more formative assessment. Really taking a look at our assessment piece and how we are providing feedback and how we're measuring how the kids are performing. Now we're trying to move into the idea of personalizing learning and getting
Yeah,
into how we utilize our time to meet the individual learning needs of each of the students. That's going to be a primary. We're going to take a look at our MTSS system this year and do a program review, and we're really going to get into that aspect of things. I created something that I pulled from the work of a lot of different people that I called 7 components of a future focused system.
okay.
And so I do talk about future focus, and I do talk about the idea of preparing students for their futures, not our past. And what does that look like, and what does that mean? And so we keep that at the forefront, but of our conversations. But we use the professional learning communities model to organize all of our work to go about it. Those things really are going to remain constant. The actual priority and goal of any grade level team or any school on any given year will fluctuate some, but I think some of those basic foundational things we have in place, the big thing that we need to do now um, in our community is wrestle with some of the declining enrollment that we've been seeing in this country. Many communities are dealing with challenges related to declining enrollment, and we've lost 25% of our student population in the last 10 years.
Wow.
So it's been quite significant for us. And for a district that's used to being able to provide all of these different opportunities for students, um, we're really uh, have to create a plan to preserve the types of opportunities that we believe in
Yeah.
and that people want. But maybe it's going to have to look different, and we're going to have to be very creative about how we do that, because we're just not gonna have the resources to be able to do what we were doing exactly the same way. And that's gonna be the biggest challenge that we face here, because, this is a community where people are proud of all of the elective offerings, all of the student clubs and activities, all the community service that we do is unbelievable. There are great things, and so it's really a challenge to say, how can we keep that going in light of the fact that we just have such a changing landscape to uh, uh, have to take into account. Um, and that's on top of all the conversations that you have about what do kids really need in this particular world. What does post-secondary, um, and life readiness really look like? We have our profile of a graduate. We're doing a lot of work with that. So you're asking yourself those questions, but at the same time, you're wrestling with some things that are very real to people, where you don't want them to feel a loss. We're trying to turn this into, how do we reinvent ourselves? What's the opportunity here? Um, and that's, asked the original question, what's the biggest challenge? That's our biggest challenge right now.
Dr. Moyer, you described that beautifully, and I can't imagine, what a balancing act that might be, right? Because you wanna attract folks to the district, you wanna make sure you maintain and your enrollment, and at the same time, of course, you're serving kids to be ready for the future, and yet you're not it may be impossible to provide all of the same things in the same way a district once did if enrollment is so much less than it is. It just sounds like such a cool place, the emphasis that you put on teams and collaboration and, you know, just what's gonna work for kids, how are we gonna do it, how will we know if it works, what do our kids need, focusing on the future, developing leadership across the organization. I That's huge because here's the thing, people move on sometimes people have to move. Sometimes people decide they wanna try a different career path. Sometimes folks retire. Sometimes, folks move up in an organization, right? And with all of the movement and the people that you serve and that we serve as educators, as educational leaders, developing that leadership across the system is huge for keeping the momentum going when you're trying to make change.
Yeah, I agree with you. Of course, that's why we do what we do. But I think that it's really criminal in a way where you have somebody that was a department chair, you have somebody that was really good at what they did and earned an opportunity to do something that they're aspiring to, and then they become a building principal, and you assume that they can just do one of the most complex jobs that there is that they've never done before. Um, a lot of districts, principals take on a role more of a building manager type of role. And I just think that if they're not owning the student learning and if they're not learning alongside the teachers and if they're not really focused on leading the instructional work and modeling some of the different things that you want to see and expect in terms of collaboration or in terms of classroom instruction, you're just not you're not going to get the outcomes that you want to see for kids. And so I don't think everybody talks about the importance of the classroom teacher, and nobody is disputing that that is critical and arguably the most important thing.
Right.
But at the same time, even the best teachers can only be so effective in a weak system or with a weak leader. So if you don't have all of the different things working together, just having a single um, high quality teacher. Sometimes, I mean, everybody would say they want their kid in that class, right? Nobody's
Yeah,
saying that,
exactly.
but you need them all. You need
But
them all.
exactly.
When
Yeah.
teachers get frustrated and they're in a weak system or they don't have a good principal, they don't perform as well as they can and as well as they want to.
You are correct, yes. And that is indeed what happens is if we focus too much on, um, you know, on solely on classroom teachers in the absence of systems, in the absence of strong instructional leaders, and managers, because they have to do all of that, right? Then what we end up with is even more variance and
Well,
folks
you get more
finding.
variance. Yep, that's
Yeah.
exactly part of the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Is that every third grader deserves a good teacher,
That's
right?
right.
Everybody goes to the high school. So how much variance can you allow for in the system? Um, and the other thing is that the work that we're asking of teachers is getting so complex that you can't just have like the superhero concept anymore.
Exactly.
You have to have the collaborative culture of people working together to be able to pull this work off. Um, Even the best of them, I think, in an honest moment, would tell you they just can't do it all themselves anymore.
That's right. Yes, I agree. Dave, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show, and again, the things that you all are doing, the culture you're working to create, the systems you're putting in place is exciting. Where could someone go if they are looking for a new home, a new place to serve as a teacher or leader, or even a new place to, send their kiddos to school? Where can they go to learn more?
Well, www.northport.k12.ny.us. That's our website. If you want to uh, learn more about us and you go to that website, obviously there's a ton of information there, but there's also the links to the Instagram pages, the Facebook pages. I write a blog called Harbor Days. And I'm on LinkedIn and I like to, post some things that we're doing with our professional learning and things like that there. Our district posts a lot of the different things on our social media accounts. And um, uh, it's really fun to follow those because when you see the things that our kids do and the competitions and the community service and the whole bit, like, we really focus. We have kids that do well academically, but it's not all about test scores here, and it's kinda nice to be in a place where it's
Mm.
not all about test scores because then you really get to see what the kids can do, and so, we try to do a good job celebrating what they do.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. And then finally, I'd like to give you an opportunity to recognize someone who's had a positive impact on your life as an educator or as an educational leader.
Yeah, I guess I would point to 2, the superintendent that first hired me, Phil Hintz, for my first, principal job. He taught me a lot about the importance of this being a people business, and, um and I think about him all the time. Another person that I just saw last week, Ray McNulty, he's got a book coming out and was helping us with our strategic plan here with my board. Has been working with leadership and innovation for years, and I want to say it's been about a good decade or so that we've worked together on some various different things in the districts that I've been in, and he's been a great uh, a great professional colleague of mine who's really helped me along the way. So those are the 2 that come to mind.
Okay, wonderful. Dr. Dave Moyer, Superintendent, Northport-East, Northport. It has been so nice to have you on the show and learn from your experience. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, I appreciate it, Wendy. Thanks a lot for having me. Thank you.
And that's a wrap, everyone. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Unlock 360. If this conversation sparked new thinking, share it with a colleague and keep the dialogue going in your school district. Public education is complex work, and progress happens when leadership and teaching move together. I'm Wendy York Davoud. Until next time, keep building the systems that unlock what's possible because strong leadership drives deeper learning.